Okay, so today we've had the latest version of the English Housing Survey published, and that contains all of the latest statistics around housing in England. So I think there's some really interesting stuff in there, particularly around, for example, levels of home ownership. So today's statistics show that 64% of households in England own their own home, and that's increased slightly compared to last year. It's up 1%. And that's significant as it's the first increase that we've seen since the mid-2000s. The level of home ownership had been dropping consistently since about 2005, and this is the first increase that we've seen since then. So it's only a small increase, but it's significant in the sense that it's the first in a while. That said, the statistics also show that it's still extremely difficult for many people to gain access to home ownership. So, for example, the stats show that 3/4 of first-time buyers are in the top 40% of the population in terms of their income, and 1/4 of first-time buyers receive some sort of financial help from friends or a family member. They also show that the percentage of renters who think that they're going to buy in the future is actually falling. So, for example, 57% of private renters say they expect to buy a home in the future, and that's dropped by 4% compared to last year. So it's a mixed bag on home ownership in a way, I think. We have seen a small increase, but the first increase in some time, but at the same time the statistics still show very clearly that for a lot of people home ownership is simply out of reach and is likely to continue to remain that way. So we really feel that despite the increase, government can't afford to forget about the group of people who are unlikely to be able to afford home ownership. The other thing that I think is really interesting is around the private rented sector. So the statistics show that across all tenures the quality of our housing stock is actually improving. So for example, the number of properties that don't meet the decent home standard has been falling, and that's true in the private rented sector as well. So 29% of private rented properties don't meet the decent home standard, and that figure is coming down. But interestingly, it's only coming down because the size of the private rented sector has been increasing. If you look at it as a raw number rather than a percentage, we're actually seeing about the same number of properties that don't meet the decent home standard. So clearly, although across our housing stock as a whole standards are improving, there is an issue around a sort of significant minority of properties in the private sector that are not up to the standard that we would like. And we've previously said that we think government could do more around incentivising good landlords to join accreditation schemes to bring their properties up to standards. The other thing that was interesting about the private rented sector is we've seen an ongoing increase in the number of working private renters who are still relying on housing benefit. So 18% of employed private renters still receive housing benefit, and that's jumped up by 4% in the last year. So clearly, as well as an issue around standards, there's also a significant issue around affordability as well.